Uh, the our keynote speaker, we actually have two speakers. Maria Kari is the first one, and she's the keynote speaker. And then after she speaks, and we have a session for Q&A, we have another speaker from Amnesty International USA. She's a community program specialist, and she will talk about Amnesty International's local programs and how she, who lives right here in our area, can help us. So, so for the keynote speaker, Maria Kari, she's an attorney and a journalist. Uh, After graduating from law school in Canada and a brief stint in corporate law, she pursued her LLM at Georgetown Law School. Maria's private practice is dedicated to providing low bono legal services to vulnerable communities, including refugees, asylum seekers, unaccompanied minors crossing the US-Mexico border, and domestic abuse survivors. She has been published in several outlets, including NPR, The Nation, and Teen Vogue, and has appeared on CNN, ABC, The Guardian, Washington Post, and Reuters as an advocate. Maria has been part of several lawsuits on behalf of Palestinian Americans, including DCI-P versus Biden, Al-Agha versus Blinken, and the collective complaint filed at the International Criminal Court against Israel. The topic of her presentation is No One Left Behind, Evacuating Palestinian Americans Stuck in Gaza. So please join me in welcoming Maria Kari to this, our monthly Amnesty International meeting today. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I've attended previous Amnesty International meetings, and you guys do incredible work. I'm looking forward to sharing some of the things that a large group of attorneys, including myself around the country, have been working on. This day is heavy for me. I woke up to frantic calls and messages from families I'm working with on the ground in Rafah, and families in America who have been desperately trying to get their immediate relatives out of Gaza. And I can tell you that just when you think that things are not going to get more difficult, more dangerous, more deadly, they seem to. So what I'm going to talk about today is I want you to kind of keep in the back of your mind what is happening on the news that we're watching today. But let me take you guys back to October 2023. And I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to just be sharing here on the screen, if you'll give me a second. Can everybody see a video?
Yes.
I see a video.
Yes.
How you do?
Yes.
This video for you. Actually, my client is in this call, Rola Lady. She's an incredible and strong woman. She works for the Department of Defense, and she has seen some tragedy that is, words fail me. I'm just going to let you see kind of what her brothers and her nieces and nephews and her family has been going through in the last 7 months. So I'll play this video now.
Hello, my name's Anna والعام وانتم بخير. I love you.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we help reunite a family like Rola Ladies. Give me a second. Can everybody see the slide show?
Yes.
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 So currently my practice is focused on the war in Gaza. I'm an immigration attorney. This is not something that I did previous to this particular war. I did assist with Afghan evacuations. In comparison to what we've seen the last 7 months, the Afghan evacuations look like the most organized, series of events. After October 7th, I was part of a team of about 30 attorneys. We filed lawsuits to help evacuate Americans who got stuck in Gaza. Some of you may not know this, but there are still Americans in Gaza. One of my clients, Khalid Murtaga, he is an American who has been begging the State Department for assistance with evacuating for months now. He remains there. But before I tell you guys all about this, I have 2 questions, and you guys can use the little hand emoji on Zoom or just shout it out. How many of you have read the inside of your passport? Maybe one person can speak up if they have. I'm going to assume that most of us have not then. And how many of you know that your passport actually tells you to register with the State Department in case of an emergency when you're traveling?
No.
So that's actually one of the functions of a
Nope.
passport, almost a sort of a tracker that should you find yourself in a foreign country facing, say, a natural disaster or a war, the State Department's able to track you and assist you. The State Department's primary job as a $60 billion agency is actually to assist Americans on foreign soil and to assist with American and to advocate for American interests abroad. When October 7th happened, there were thousands of Americans in both Gaza and Israel, and overnight they found themselves in an unimaginable, violence-filled war zone. So leaving was not going to be as simple as catching the next flight out in such a situation. Israel's Ben Gurion airport was closed for days, and in Gaza, there is no airport, and nor is the Rafah crossing historically an open border. So within hours, both Israelis and Gazans began reaching out to the State Department for help getting out, and the State Department did what it is supposed to do. It went into overdrive to help evacuate Israeli Americans and their loved ones. And it's important to understand how Israeli Americans and their immediate relatives were rescued. The U.S. arranged for Royal Caribbean cruise ships to take the Israelis from Haifa to Cyprus, where charter jets were waiting for them. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis actually went so far as to fund one of these flights privately, and he helped bring home dozens of Israeli Americans and even brought home 4 of their pet dogs. At the same time, a few hundred miles from Haifa, you have thousands of Palestinian Americans and their loved ones who are starting to get bombed and shot at by weapons that their tax dollars paid for. These families in the U.S., their families in the United States, some of them who are on this call were literally begging the State Department for help. Now, some of you are probably thinking, how is an evacuation possible in the middle of a war, particularly in a region that has no airport and its borders are controlled by an occupying force? What many people don't understand or appreciate is that the State Department has a long history of evacuation during wartime. In 2006, war broke out in Lebanon in very similar conditions to what we saw in October. Israel bombed the Lebanese airport and it blocked all ports of entry. Even despite all of and then more recently in 2021, we all watched the US military fly plane out of Afghanistan. And we saw in real time as people who had been our allies in Afghanistan were desperately clinging on to jets mid-takeoff. So after these disastrous evacuations, after the disastrous evacuation in Afghanistan, the State Department and the Department of Defense got together and they wrote up a report in which they admitted to mistakes being made and they made a commitment to not repeat those same mistakes. Now, coming back to Gaza, unlike the US, several smaller countries acted fast. Within days of October 7th, and South Korea worked with Israeli, Qatari, and Egyptian governments to get its citizens out. Similarly, the Qataris evacuated their citizens out by landing a military plane in a nearby Egyptian city. And Gaza is on the ocean, making evacuation by sea a very real possibility. And then, of course, there is the infamous Rafah crossing, which so many of us now are familiar with. This crossing is controlled by two of our greatest allies in the region, if not the world, the Israelis and the Egyptians. So all this is to say, just as the administration was able to move lightning fast to make sure that Israeli Americans were evacuated before any Israeli military operation even began inside of Gaza, it could and should have wielded its enormous influence in the region to demand that all Palestinian Americans and their loved ones be given safe passage out of Gaza. But none of that has happened. In fact, as I mentioned at the top of the call, at least one American remains in Gaza that I'm working with. And despite months of begging and advocacy efforts on his part and now my part, we have not been successful in getting him out. So allow me to tell you about some of the people that I've gotten to know in the time that I've been working on these cases. One man was a 70-year-old green card holder. He's from Chicago, and his son was a neurosurgeon. He contacted me because his mother got on the exit list in December, but for reasons we didn't understand at the time, the elderly father was caught in this bottleneck that was created by Israel, in which Israel was essentially forbidding all men over the age of 16 from leaving Gaza from the period of December to, I would say, still ongoing. Then there was another client. He was a man from Austin, so close to home for some of us. And he had a newlywed wife who was stuck in Gaza. He reached out to me, and while they were waiting for her name to appear on the Rafah crossing list, the IDF raided the hospital where his wife was sheltering and actually had worked at before the war. She'd been a nurse there. And the IDF detained her during the roundup. And for 9 long days, the husband and I did not know if she was alive or dead. And to date, he tells me he's still in disbelief that she is alive and safely out of Gaza. And then there was a family of 6 Americans. They managed to make contact with me the night that we were all busy with the Super Bowl. And when Israel took advantage of a distracted American public by ratcheting up its genocidal campaign by bombing Rafah, this father contacted me begging me for help getting his American children out. And he was telling me that these young children had seen unspeakable horrors, including the dead bodies of their cousins, one of them whom had been a newborn. So by week 3 of the war, it was clear to a group of us that the house was on fire, the firefighters were not coming, and it was on us to start grabbing buckets to do what we could do. So a group of us did what the law empowers us to do in times when the government fails to act. We turned to the courts. Because to us, it was clear, this is not politics, this is a constitutional crisis. So from October to December, we filed lawsuits across the country against the Biden administration for its failure to evacuate Palestinian Americans in the same way that evacuated Israeli Americans. These lawsuits were meant to be pressure tactics, and they generated significant media attention. It seemed that whenever I went on CNN or ABC with a client of mine, they would get on the exit list the next day. In total, we helped bring home 60 Americans through the lawsuits. And through all of the lawsuit energy, it became crystal clear to me, the administration had the power to help. It had simply chosen not to. While we were racing around the clock to save Americans, and I would argue that many of us are still doing the same for Americans and their immediate relatives, the death toll has only climbed. Today, it stands at hundreds of thousands of Palestinians wounded or missing in Gaza, and over 37,000 dead. More than half the dead are women and children. You're 16 years old in Gaza, this is the 6th war you've lived through. And we've all heard it said before, right? This did not begin on October 7th. This is not the first time that Israel's used the language of self-defense to justify its brutality, nor is it the first time it's used the language of human shields to slaughter children. This is not the first time Israel's disappeared men. This is not the first time it has wrongly imprisoned hundreds of Palestinian men, women, and children without any charges or access to a lawyer or any due process. And I have clients who have been detained and are currently in the notorious Israeli administrative detention system. So by now, even if we don't want to, we've all seen these IDF TikTok videos where they're blasting Gaza to bits to a soundtrack. They're posing with the lingerie of Palestinian women. They've taken photos of men stripped naked and blindfolded as they're being carted away to be tortured or likely killed. We've seen and know of the flower massacre. We've seen the mass graves outside of Al-Shifa hospital. We've seen the many, many dead babies. I think everybody on this call can agree with me when I say that something about this genocide has been. One of the things I've been doing in this time is that I've been going back to history to understand the present moment. I'm Muslim, and there's a hadith that I think of often, and the hadith is the sayings and the practice of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I paraphrase this hadith in which the Prophet directed armies not to kill women or children or the elderly. He prohibited the cutting down of fruit-bearing trees or destroying a building with people in it. This hadith, the sayings of the Prophet, directed armies not to burn bees or to slaughter sheep or camels unless it's for food. Indian sacred texts have similar rules of war. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana also have recognized proportionality thousands of years before the Geneva Conventions. In the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, we talk about how elephants should only be used against elephants and soldiers should only fight soldiers, and that hyper-destructive weapons are amoral. And then we think of the ancient Greeks, right? In wartime for the ancient Greeks, the temples and embassies were considered inviolable safe spaces. The safe passage of civilians during evacuation time was to be respected, as was the ability to bury your dead. The ancient Greeks, much like the early Muslims, had laws against poisoning water supplies and using poisonous weapons. So these ancient civilizations, which Hollywood has convinced us to be barbaric and lawless, have actually had more robust wartime laws than the asymmetrical warfare Israel is waging on Gaza today. And what I see and what I think a lot of us can agree on is that a dangerous standard has been set for future wars. And through it all, the unconditional big brother, the United States, has failed to condemn horror after horror, atrocity after atrocity, war crime after war crime. The Americans that we were able to help evacuate have come home broken. One client, a grandfather from California, had been vacationing in Gaza when the war broke out. He told me he turned his family's 1 acre of land into a mass grave. He put pieces of his grandchildren in this mass grave before his name appeared finally on the Rafah exit list, and he was able to return to the United States. Another family of 3 American brothers told me that when their parents' home was bombed, their father was crawling through the rubble. He was holding a white flag and an expired US passport in his hands. Still, he was shot by an Israeli sniper, and for days, the brothers in the US worked to get an ambulance to him. The sons stayed on the phone with their father as he bled out and died begging for mercy. When my team at the Arab American Civil Rights League got on this case, the mother was barely alive in the north of Gaza, and our team worked on a US-approved extradition of these boys' mother. It's an incredible story of what can happen if there is US-led will and determination to assist. And I encourage you all to watch the 60-minute episode on this case, which will air sometime this month. I can be up here all evening with such stories. Right now, I'm in touch with families who are in Rafah, desperately begging me for guidance on what to do in light of the evacuation orders. And I don't know what to tell them. I know women who've gone into early labor without access to medical care. They had births and cesarean surgeries without anesthesia. I know of at least 2 clients of mine, Borak and Hashim Ilaga, who were detained by the Israelis, and to this day, we don't even know what they've been accused of. And they've not been able to meet with a lawyer. Each of these stories is uniquely horrifying, yet there's a similar thread here of betrayal, anger, a sense of abandonment that these Palestinian Americans rightly feel because this administration's inaction, and that in the sense that so many of these lives could have been saved with timely US intervention. So my team and I, we continue to turn to the courts with the hopes of stopping this extermination of Palestinian nationhood. On November 13, the Center for Constitutional Rights sued the Biden administration for its complicity in the genocide of the Palestinian people. This was all over the news. Some of you might be familiar with this lawsuit. If not, I encourage you to familiarize yourself with it. We're in the appeal process. My team and I have submitted 2 amici briefs to this court. Amici briefs are essentially us saying, look, we're not part of the litigation, we're friends of the court, we're here to guide the judge with understanding why this lawsuit is important. In our amici briefs, we told the judge of the death and the destruction the Palestinian American community has endured since October. We talked about the IDF bombing of Gaza's only poultry farm, to its enforced disappearance of my client Rola Lady's brother as he evacuated from the north to the south with his wife and his babies, from the destruction of countless family homes, to IDF soldiers who have pocketed clients' money and jewelry left behind as they fled within minutes, to the irreparable economic harm and the financial loss that has been suffered by every single Gazan since October, as well as the complete social, cultural, and physical erasure of the Gazan Strip. This is one of the lawsuits. That's what it looks like. And at this point, I can tell you that every Palestinian around this world, including the Palestinians in Houston and Texas, the Palestinians who might be your doctors, your lawyers, your neighbors, your teachers, every single Palestinian knows somebody who has experienced one or if not all of the things that I've just talked about in my talk so far. So finding the stories for these cases that I'm part of is not easy, is not difficult. What's difficult is staying in the court's word count limit. And the judges here in the US have told us they're moved. They note, just like the judges in the South Africa litigation, that it is possible that Israel's conduct amounts to genocide, but American judges continue to rule that this is a question of foreign policy left to the executive branch. And look, this is the ultimate issue, right? The law on its own does not wield the outcomes we want, nor does it give us the outcomes we hope for. Rarely do lawyers go into court and get the result we need, because whether we want to admit it or not, legal proceedings are politicized. So the law alone cannot and will not overcome America's decades-old foreign policy that's foundationally built on refusing to recognize the humanity of Palestinian people. Courts alone will not overcome this administration's repeated insistence to only take note of, but to never condemn the erasure of Palestinian children. My parting words were different. I went ahead and I removed them because everything has changed in my mind since I woke up this morning. Rafah is the last place that people can go in Gaza. We talk a lot about American complicity, and today I actually Googled the definition of complicity, and the phrases that jumped out to me were partnership and involvement in wrongdoing, association, participation in a wrongful act. I don't have a neat and tidy conclusion for you because I'm in it right now. Like I told you, I have an American on the ground still. I have dozens of families I'm in touch with who we filed what we call humanitarian parole applications for. We have the infrastructure here in the United States. We have a system, an immigration system that allows us to parole into this country people who are caught up in the exact type of war that we're seeing right now in Gaza. If we used it when Ukraine was invaded, we created a remarkable, unprecedented program called Unite for Ukraine, which allowed for Ukrainians to flee the horrors of what we're still continuing to see in Ukraine. Similarly, when when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, we again developed a humanitarian.
On the top, there's this attorney. Oh, sorry.
When Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, we again had a robust humanitarian parole program that was put into place to help the allies who had helped us. We have been advocating, and there's some attorneys here on this call who have been working day and night to advocate with this administration. We have shared all these stories that I've shared with you today. But what's lacking is the political willpower, that political urgency. So if there's something that sticks out to you from this, I hope it will be to continue to get involved and speak out on behalf of the people that are hurting so much in your communities. Congressional representatives can help a lot. Congressional momentum is needed in this moment, especially to help with the immediate relatives of American citizens. Those are cases that have been identified by the State Department as priority for evacuation, yet so many of them remain in Gaza. So please reach out to your elected representatives, ask them what they're doing. And if you get a boilerplate response, push back, demand that they do more, and reach out to the administration in whatever way you can. If you have a social media platform, if you're a writer, if you're part of a reputable organization like Amnesty International, reach out and demand that they put into place a program that does more than just pay lip service. And I'm going to leave it at that for today. And I'm happy to take any questions that you guys might have. Thank you so much for being here. Here I have a picture of the relatives of the little girl who I shared a video of in the call. And these relatives have been killed. And again, my phone is full of pictures and videos like the ones I've shared with you guys. That's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. So the way we normally take care of the Q&A is you unmute yourself, ask your question, and then mute yourself back. We kind of expect a lot of questions, so just be patient and go ahead and let's get started.
If I
Who's
can
that?
just interrupt, Wally already raised his hand.
Okay, Wally, go ahead.
Sorry, I have to unmute. Yeah, I guess I would like a little more. So what Amnesty International does is to identify individuals that are in need of action by countries or politicians, and so would it be appropriate to ask from you the names of individuals that we should be including in our writings to the federal government, that these people are American citizens and need to be rescued?
Absolutely. So at this point, all our clients have given us permission. And by clients, I mean some of my families that are in Gaza, and then some of their representatives here in the US who are speaking on their behalf. All of them have given us the permission to share these names with the government. So intercession is critical at this point. And, you know, I'm the law office of Maria Kari, a one-person show, coming from Amnesty International, critical. So yes, please, I welcome your resources. I can speak to you offline about what that would look like. I will also say that most, if not all of my cases have been on the desk of the highest ranking officials at both the White House and the State Department. Not to take any names because I don't want to get too political, but the people at the very top are aware of a lot of these cases. And again, that apathy, that sense of abandonment that we constantly hear about in the news, I think it's important to put faces to it. Like that is what we are talking about when we say that Palestinian Americans feel abandoned. Because I can assure you that this administration is aware of, but that doesn't mean that we stop. We continue raising it through all the channels that we have. So yes, I can absolutely engage with you after on strategy, providing you with whatever information you need.
Okay. I think the next is Roger. Roger, go ahead.
Yes. As I watch this and listen to your presentation, you know, it's difficult because, you know, certain human beings are going to be selected and certain human beings are going to be left out. And I'm looking at the big picture of all the people over there that are being penalized for the Hamas. And then our political groups over here in the United States, you know, stuck in the middle trying to figure out how they're going to navigate this political hot potato, because they don't want to piss off the Israelis and they don't want to piss off, well, they're trying to figure out how can they get the Palestinians, individuals from that area or from the homeland without upsetting them, but they've already upset them. And then basically they sit there saying, I ain't gonna vote. So basically what they're gonna do is they're gonna vote and let Trump come right back in. And that is crazy, you know? So, you know, I don't know. I don't know, but it's wrong of what's going on, period. Because I contrast this to when Lincoln was trying to make a decision on with slaves. He really didn't want to free the slaves, you know, so it was a political thing. And so this is political, and they need to figure something out because innocent people are dying for the cause of whatever.
I appreciate your comment. For me, this has been solely a constitutional crisis and a humanitarian crisis. The families that I've been in touch with are engineers and teachers and students, doctors and lawyers, and some of the smartest, most intelligent people. The resilience of the Palestinian people continues to amaze me. I am not Palestinian myself. Before this, I had Palestinian friends here in the US, but the people I have gotten to know there are incredibly resilient, patient. Not all of them wanted to leave. Some of them have had to make this decision out of desperation. And we have always left that in the hands of the Palestinian people. Whether they want to exit and evacuate and need our assistance or not is always going to be up to them. What I can tell you, though, is a lot of what I'm working on is simply, it has been done before for other war zones.
Right.
Us asking the government to do the same thing for people in a similar situation who just happen to be Palestinian. And that's why we keep hitting roadblocks. So to me, it's the only politicized element of it is convincing this administration that Palestinian lives matter just as much as Ukrainian lives, Afghan lives, Haitian lives.
Right. Understand that.
Too. I'm not even worried about whether they want to leave Gaza, who's keeping them in, who's involved. None of that matters to me. America has a voice, a say, and a lot of control in this region. So if there's somebody who has reached out to me and qualifies for State Department's own guidelines that is created for who qualifies for evacuation assistance, and it's just not happening because of a lack of willpower on part of this administration, that's where my problem is. Why are you not doing what you have said you will do?
All right, I don't see any hands raised. Who's got the next question?
Bob has his hand raised.
Okay, oh, I see. Bob, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
That. We have heard today that there's a possible deal, and I mean possible, that they may have a truce for so long, 30 to 60 days. So during that time, would it be possible for the warring parties to allow these folks out of Gaza and to make things more humane? Is that a possibility? Or do you think the war will just kind of continue on, but on a lower standard?
So what my limited understanding on all of this is, in terms of, I'm not involved and can't speak to any of the negotiations with regards to a ceasefire or not. But what I'm hearing from families on the ground is that, first of all, it's premature celebration. They're not very optimistic that it's going to change their circumstances. They still believe that Rafah's evacuation orders are something they have to act on because the threat of invasion is imminent. So I'm seeing this as a very dangerous time for them, regardless of whether the media would like us to believe that there's a truce on the horizon or not. It's almost like one of those things where, like, when it happens is when we're going to start celebrating. So a ceasefire, of course, absolutely is the #1 most urgent thing. But what that means for the Rafah crossing is difficult to say. So back in November, when we had that temporary brief hiatus in the war and there was a hostage exchange, you didn't see any movement at the Rafah crossing. So even a cessation of active fighting doesn't mean that the Rafah crossing is going to see a flow of people, which worries me. But if there is some kind of a truce and a cessation of fighting, that's when I think we need to strike, when the moment is really hot, when we need to say, like, this is a perfect time to evacuate people to safety who have been approved by the State Department. So one of the things I didn't mention in my talk, and I think that people really need to understand, is all of the families that we're working on behalf of have been approved by the State Department to exit. So the holdup is coming from the Israelis and the Egyptians. Israeli Kogat for their own reasons, the Egyptians because they've turned this into a money-making scheme where they're now charging exorbitant prices per person to let them out into Egypt. So the delay is not from the US side. The US has approved these people to exit. And I stress this because there are zero security concerns. These people have been pre-vetted, they're qualified to satisfy the State Department's own guidelines. They have been approved to exit. And there's just simply no explanation. It's unconscionable to me, it's unfathomable to me that we have yet to get them out. And that's where rallying with our elected representatives becomes really important, because I have firsthand seen where if there's that congressional push, my client's able to get out. Whereas that where that media kind of brings the client or myself on air, we're able to get them out. So yes, absolutely, if there's a truce, then that's, I think, the right moment.
So what's the best thing we could do for them? Is it protesting? I know the encampments have been really amazing, seeing the students out there. But what can we do, you know?
One-on-one advocacy right now for individual families that you may know, or individual families that I can tell you about if you reach out to me and you happen to be from the same area. So for instance, I'm in Houston, I'm in touch with Houston families. Some of my clients are in California, some are in Chicago. So if you kind of have a network, a sphere of influence, like mobilize that, but one-on-one advocacy with your elected representatives to say, hey, like this is somebody in my community that I know of whose immediate relatives are in Gaza. What can we do to make sure that they get out? Can you help us engage with the State Department to make sure that their names appear on the list? They have been approved, we need to get them on the list. Like that kind of one-on-one advocacy, I think, is more effective right now on a family by family, on a case by case basis. And that's my personal opinion. One of my colleagues was on the call. She has left. If she's able to come back on, she can talk a little bit more about that too. But yes, I will drop my email in the inbox for you, in the chat. If you would like to do a little bit more in terms of advocacy, I'm happy to kind of guide you on how and what that looks like and go from there.
Ruth, did you have a question?
Actually, Dina asked my question, so thank you, Dina.
Oh. Okay, well, I don't know. Roger, did you raise your hand again, or was it you forgot to put it down?
Yes, I did. And we were talking about our people in Congress. We have Babin, we have Cruz, and we have Cornyn. Cruz is not even answering his phone.
We've been engaged with them for about almost 7 months now on behalf of so many families. There's
What
so
is
much.
Cruz saying?
Nothing. Yeah.
Okay. What's Babin saying?
There has been the same boilerplate template response that they have been emailing all of the families, saying that they have done the best that they can, and they will be following the story closely and wish us all the best. Yeah.
It's very frustrating, especially when you talk to them, because they kind of don't view the people as, you know, human. I think that's what the main problem is.
Yeah.
And if I can say something about Senator Cruz, I don't know if Nilafar is still on the call, but she and I and a couple of other people met with one of his staffers in DC, you know, remotely. We had a really good conversation. We got to say what we had to say. And when we were wrapping up, she said, you know, I'm going to take all of this to the senator, but I just want you to know that I can't remember the exact title, but it was whatever his staffer is in charge of foreign policy is Israeli. So, and I said, all right, thank you for letting us know that. But, you know, I think that's one of the obstacles, perhaps.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you know, one of the things that sticks in my craw was back right after the invasion, and I've related this to other people. When they had the Republican presidential debate, they were saying we don't want to stop Israel by having some sort of a pause or a peace, some sort of peace accord. Let them go ahead and do what they need to do, no matter what it costs. and one of the Republican congressmen after that debate said, "Go in there and just kill them all." You know, this is where we are, and this is horrific. And so, I mean, we have a number of people who are allied with you, and I'm one of them. But man, when you've got people on the other side who have no problem talking about annihilating an entire area of life, this is terrible.
Well, I always come back to the philosophy of KISS, right? Like, keep it simple, stupid. And that's what I have to remind myself. Don't get bogged down in the details of who these people are, legal process and the immigration process and how the courts work and what their rights are under the Constitution. No, go back to the beginning. These are American citizens and their immediate relatives who qualify under the State Department's own guidelines. Get them out. Why are they still there? Simple.
Quick question. The logistics of the evacuation, could that possibly justify the slow movement?
Sorry, could you say it again? I didn't catch the first time.
The logistics of evacuation, could that somehow justify to some extent why the State Department has moved so slowly?
Absolutely not. So every day, the Facebook group that exists for these families and for us advocates that we check daily posts all the countries that have their nationals exiting Gaza. US is always the least amount of people. There's days, sometimes weeks, where the US doesn't even have anybody leaving. Other countries have been rallying behind their citizens and their citizens' immediate relatives. Something I talked about at the top of my presentation. You know, you had these countries that have much smaller number of people there, a lot less clout in the region, move really fast, show a sense of urgency to say, hey, you're not going to kill our people before you invade and do what you need to do. Why has the US not done that, right? And again, it just comes back to in my opinion, not in my opinion, in my experience, because I am working with some of these high-level officials who have just, you know, shown a complete lack of willingness to engage with us on this issue. And it's not very difficult because the Rafah crossing has had an outward and inward flow of people since the start of this genocide. There have been people leaving every single day. I mean, how is it that Norway and Sweden and other smaller countries like that have had a higher number of its people and immediate relatives of its citizens evacuating in the United States? It's completely unacceptable. So I definitely do not give them the grace of saying, oh, it's the logisticals, it's the difficulties. Like, you're a $60 billion agency. It's been 7 months of watching these people being decimated. There's no excuse. It's inexcusable in my mind.
Yeah. I think we got one last question from Angela. Angela, go ahead and unmute and ask your question, please.
Is Egypt still charging people to come? And there's no way to get that waived or like put pressure on their government to like
I mean,
not
it's
do that?
my understanding is that it's kind of a program that's been blessed by the government. There's, if you look at Hala Agency, which has been part of this, what I would call like a bribery scheme where you're capitalizing on like the suffering and the desperation of people. If you look at like the owner of Hala Agency, is like there's a direct line to Sisi, right? So they really in any conflict, bad actors pop up. So you saw a similar bribe system when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban. So it's not shocking or surprising that that has happened, but it's very inhumane that a lot of the people whose lives could have been easily saved are now at the mercy of Hala Agency, which charges about $5,000 per person. So yes, it's very much in full swing. The rules change every day. It's very arbitrary. And it's just bad faith actors that have convoluted an already complicated and ineffective system.
Salam, can I ask a question if you have time?
Oh, wait a second. I think Shaheen was before you, and it was
That's
Shaheen,
okay.
and
That's
then
okay. Just go ahead.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
No, please, Shaheen, go ahead. Salam. Please go ahead, Shaheen.
All right, Shaheen,
Well, this
1 minute, and
this is
then
actually
we'll allow Sarah.
okay. This is actually Shamim using Shaheen's account. That's my wife. So, but I just wanted to ask: the International Criminal Court of Justice is, supposedly about to issue some kind of a statement about. Is that going to make a difference in the situation from a legal perspective and force the U.S. to do more, or do you think that's just a hope and a wish and it's not going to make any difference?
Be too pessimistic on this call, and I feel like I am being quite a pessimistic person. And I hold hope for all of my clients' safety. But I will say that the ICJ ruling, while welcome and a part and parcel of the ongoing litigation across the U.S., or at least in California, it's going to be a welcome statement, but it's not going to be something that I think that the Biden administration is going to acknowledge or they're not going to give it much weight because they don't inherently recognize the jurisdiction of the ICJ over this matter. So that's kind of where I'm at with my understanding. But of course, it'll be used by lawyers in federal court.
All right, Sarah, your turn.
Yeah, Salam, thank you, Maria. Jazakallah khairan for all that you're doing. A very simple, practical, yet loaded question. All of us know that they have put forward a narrative that has brought Palestinians to a dehumanized level. How can we, as common citizens, counter this narrative? Any keywords to use? Any advocacy platforms? Any way to disseminate this kind of counter attack this kind of narrative?
That's a really good question. I want to take it back to my team because there's a bunch of really good, enthusiastic, and intelligent and far smarter than me attorneys and advocates working on this issue. And maybe we can provide, Amnesty International with a one-pager on kind of like the talking points and the buzzwords for when you are engaging with elected representatives or the media, or when you're talking on your social media platforms. So if you, give me a couple of days to maybe try to get a resource for you that we can circulate with. But I will just say that I look to the students for inspiration, the students, the encampments, the ongoing protests, the peaceful protests. I think that they're setting an example for all of us, and I think that that's just the way forward. But yes, I'm happy to a resource for you.
Thank you. And on that note, if the participants can check out The Guardian, today they have published an article by the Columbia University students that the Wall Street Journal and New York Times refused to publish.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So The Guardian in England. So, just some advocacy from my part. Thank you so much.
All right, okay, so we are at the end here. So Maria, thank you so much for joining us and speaking on this such a important topic. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was a very important and timely presentation. And if any of our members want to contact you, will it be okay if I share your email address with them or send you their questions?
Yes, I've already dropped my email in the chat one more time, and I'm looking forward to hearing and thank you guys. Looking forward to hearing from you guys, and thank you so much for some of your guys' really engaged questions and just.
All right, folks. Thank you so much. So don't hang up. We do have another speaker here. So the next speaker is Maya Tatum Latimer. She is a community program specialist from Amnesty International USA, and she has a special message from the mothership here to all of us. So Maya, go ahead and tell us what you want to tell us about.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for letting me join this presentation. That was great, Maria. Yes, so my name is Maya Tatum Lattimore. I am a community program specialist at Amnesty International USA. And I am actually here to talk to you about the member leadership role of an area coordinator. It's a role that we're like recruiting volunteers for. And so I was gonna give a brief presentation. And I can share my screen really quickly. Just to talk through that role and share that application. And I also can take any questions you all have either now or via email. So the area coordinator role, if you have not heard of the area coordinator role, it is basically it's an organizer of human rights. It is a volunteer role like a community programs like a country and thematic specialist, like someone who works on death penalty abolition. It's a member leadership role. So it's folks who are interested in working with other local groups, specifically in their region. So in Texas right now, we have 5 local groups. And so we are looking for an area coordinator who is a member of Amnesty who would like to do another leadership role, working specifically with folks in Texas specifically, but like the southern region in general. So it's really heavy on like relationship building. There's some education and mobilizing with other folks, as well as just working with local groups in your area. These are the main components of an area coordinator. So local group support. So you are building relationships with other groups, relationships with other members. You're also strategically thinking through activism. So if we're thinking about the country in general, an area coordinator from Texas or the southern region would be able to give us a sense of like what the themes are in that region. It would be helpful to get a sense of like what these local groups are looking for, what resources they need, so we can be better equipped to support local groups. I am a team of 2, and we work with all the local groups in the country. And so area coordinators are really impactful, not only because they're members themselves, but because they are in the regions that they are working on. For the grassroots networks, again, like just that regional support. So folks who are
I'm gonna take a nap,
area,
Abdel, and then I'm gonna do some work.
Can you
go
ahead?
They work in that region, so they're able to support newer groups by visiting that meeting, seeing what support they need if there's an event. It's really just good to have a person who is kind of been a talking point between the larger Amnesty, which is just a lot of different groups, and then like having that kind of in person local support. Leadership and skill building, if someone is like specifically interested in working with members across the country on activism events, campaigns, facilitating trainings. The area coordinators work really closely with staff and the area coordinator steering committee, which is just a collection of area coordinators who specifically want to work on like strategic planning. It's an opportunity for that. And then communication and reporting. So it's having a touch point for the state or the region, having someone who can check in on you. Again, these folks are members themselves. And we know that members have a wealth of information, and it would be helpful to have that touch point from someone who is in your region. Some like baseline kind of qualifications and resources. So it's about 15 hours a month. We have meetings every other month. We want someone who's just active for 1 year in Amnesty. So there are some people who do various different member leadership roles, but you only need to be active for 1 year. We are asking that it's preferred that someone can make a 2-year commitment, just so that we can like build in that relationship. And then yes, we have those bi-monthly calls. We do some self-assessments just to get a sense of like how you're feeling about the role, how we can improve. And then the resources are area coordinators get $400 annually to support specifically work in their region. So if someone like is specifically trying to support their own local group, they have that budget to do that. If it's a larger project that would take like thousands and thousands of dollars, we have some SIF grants that are available for that, but they do have a budget. We do a biannual in-person retreat. So that is that it's an all expense paid retreat to bring all the ACs together. This year it's in Chicago. to talk strategically about the planning of area coordinators, resources that local groups need, what are people in your area looking for, and how can we provide them with support? And then also training and coaching from staff and other member leaders. And then this is a map of our local groups and area coordinators right now. So we have 5 local groups in Texas. So this is where we're looking. Texas is one of our priority states for looking for an area coordinator, which is why I'm meeting with all of you. We are actually going to be visiting some of these states. So we're actually going to be, me and my counterpart, Jennifer Estrada, are going to be coming to Texas sometime between July and October. So look out for an email, just to check in on groups in that area, since they don't have an area coordinator right now, and we want to make sure that they feel supported, because we just have such a small team. And so that's why I'm here talking to you all. I really would love to get an area coordinator for the southern region, and specifically Texas. We have an area coordinator in Florida that's on sabbatical right now because she is a country specialist for Palestine. So she has shifted most of her work to focusing on Gaza and ceasefire activism. So that's why we're looking in Texas. And then finally, these are some other membership leader roles in Amnesty. So you may have had some of these roles. We are specifically looking for area coordinators, but there are also other roles of country and thematic specialists. If you're interested in specifically state death penalty abolition, we have the youth leader in youth leadership and activism. So if there are young folks or schools that you partner with and they're looking to get deeper involved in member leadership, we have that, as well as legislative coordinators. So I'm specifically looking for area coordinators, but we do also have other volunteer member leader roles as well. And then just finally, this is a link to the application, which I can also toss in the chat. But that can give some information about the role, as well as just email if you would like to have any questions. So I know that was a lot, so I will stop sharing, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but also I can put my email in the chat. Thank you for your time.
Does anybody have any questions? Raise your hands.
Hire Mohammed. Mohammed would be a good candidate too.
Well, I wish I had the time.
That's fair.
I could use the $400.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm also happy to talk through it with you if you'd like, since you've been voluntold. But yes, I'm happy to take you.
Maya, I just got a text from somebody who's watching. He said he may be interested, so I'm gonna give him your contact info, and he can, contact you.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Any comments? So Maya, thank you so much. Hey, let us know when you're coming down here. Yeah. We'd love to have a face-to-face meeting with, with you and the membership. Ruth, do you have your? Oh, you're clapping. I thought you raised your hand. Okay. All right. Bob, Wally, do you guys have any questions for Maya?
No, I don't.
I don't think so.
All
Thank
right.
you for your
good.
presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
For joining us.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. Oh, Maya, can you send me your presentation so I can share it with the membership?
Yes, of course. Of course.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful meeting. Our next meeting is on June 3rd. We always meet first Monday of the month. The meeting is from 6:30 to 7:30 most of the time, unless we have a really great speaker and an important topic. Like tonight, we went past 7:30 by 6 minutes. But we normally run our meeting one for 1 hour, and 6 p.m. to 6:30 is our social hour. We talk, we connect, and we talk about what we have done and what we plan to do. So it was a lot of fun to join our meetings at 6 o'clock. Zoom doors open at 6. So please come back, and if you if you're new, this is the first time you are attending this meeting, please contact one of us. I put my email address and my telephone number in the chat box. And we normally send maybe 2 emails per month to notify you about our monthly meetings. So if you want to receive those emails, if you want to join and become a paid member, contact Wally. He put his contact info in the chat too. Hopefully we'll see you all again next month.
Well, Roger has his hand up.
Yes, Roger.
Hey, I just want to make an announcement that this month for the band meeting, we're going to have Chris Hollins is going to be the comptroller for Houston. Will be our guest speaker.
We love
Chris Hollins.
Yeah, we love.
Yeah, he'll be here to speak. Yeah, so just want to put that out. And I enjoyed the meeting tonight, Mohammed. But you will make a good candidate. I just want to let you know because you Iron Man. You do almost everything. So I just want to give you that's a compliment.